Document. Part 7. The crew of the Aurora Dawn waited anxiously in the shimmering chamber, their minds replaying the trials they had just endured. Each member felt a mix of pride and uncertainty, pride in how far they'd come, but uncertainty about whether it would be enough. Rachel paced slowly, her boots clicking softly against the polished floor. Ethan leaned against a wall, his arms crossed, as he stared at the glowing patterns that danced across its surface. Daniel sat cross-legged on the ground, sketching notes on his tablet, trying to distract himself from the tension. Lucas stood near the center of the room, his posture rigid, as if ready to spring into action at any moment. Hours passed, or maybe it was only minutes. Time seemed distorted in this alien environment. Finally, the air shifted and Xenon 7 reappeared, its form flickering like a mirage. The alien's presence immediately silenced the crew, drawing their full attention. The council is reached. A decision, Xenon 7 announced, its voice echoing through the chamber. Your performance during the trials demonstrated both strength and vulnerability. Humanity has shown potential, but also flaws. Rachel stepped forward, her heart pounding. What does that mean for us? She asked, her voice steady, despite the storm of emotions swirling inside her. Xenon 7 tilted its head slightly, as if considering the question. Earth will be granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council. However, your inclusion is contingent upon further actions. Must prove yourselves not only capable, but also trustworthy. A wave of relief washed over the crew, though it was tempered by the weight of responsibility. Provisional membership wasn't a guaranteed, it was a second chance, an opportunity to earn their place among the stars. Rachel nodded, accepting the terms without hesitation. We understand, she said firmly, and we're ready to do whatever it takes. Xenon 7 gestured toward the exit. Come, there is much for you to learn. The crew followed Xenon 7 through a series of corridors, each more breathtaking than the last. The walls pulsed with light and strange symbols floated in midair, shifting and rearranging themselves as they moved. They passed other aliens going about their business, some glancing curiously at the humans, while others ignored them entirely. Despite the beauty surrounding them, the crew couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, judged. Even they eventually arrived at a massive hall filled with representatives from various species. Each alien occupied a designated area, arranged in a circular pattern around a central platform where Xenon 7 stood. The room buzzed with quiet conversation, though none of the crew could understand the languages being spoken. Their translation. Devices struggled to keep up, emitting soft beeps as they processed unfamiliar sounds. This is the council chamber, Xenon 7 explained. Here, decisions affecting the galaxy are made. Your presence marks the first step in humanity's journey toward integration. Rachel scanned the room, taking in the diversity of life forms before her. Some species looked humanoid, while others defied description entirely. One representative floated above the ground, its body composed of swirling gases. Another resembled a massive insect, its chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the light. Despite their differences, all shared an air of authority that commanded respect. As Xenon 7 introduced the human delegation, a murmur rippled through the chamber. Some aliens nodded approvingly, while others exchanged skeptical glances. A bird-like creature with iridescent feathers tilted its head, studying the crew intently. Provisional status, it chirped in a melodic tone. Wise choice. But let us see how long it lasts. Rachel forced herself to maintain eye contact, or whatever served as eyes for these beings. She knew skepticism was inevitable, but she refused to let it intimidate her. We're here to learn and contribute, she said, her voice carrying across the room. To grow alongside you. Her words earned a few nods of approval, though many remained unconvinced. A tall, reptilian figure with scales that shimmered like oil slicks stepped forward, addressing the assembly. Earth's inclusion brings risks, it hissed, its forked tongue flicking as it spoke. Their history of conflict and destruction cannot be ignored. How can we trust them? Rachel clenched her fists but kept her composure. Every civilization has faced challenges, she replied calmly. Ours is no different, but we've learned from our mistakes. and we're committed to building a better future, not just for ourselves, but for everyone. The reptilian alien narrowed its slit-like eyes, clearly unimpressed. Words are easy. Actions speak louder. Before Rachel could respond, another representative interjected a floating orb covered in intricate patterns that pulsed rhythmically. Its voice resonated like a deep hum, soothing yet authoritative. "Let us not judge too quickly," it said. "Potential is a fragile thing. It must be nurtured, not crushed." The room fell silent, the tension easing slightly. Xenon 7 stepped forward once again, bringing the discussion back on track. "Earth's journey begins now," it declared. "But remember, alignment with the Council comes with responsibilities. Cooperation, transparency, and accountability are non-negotiable." With that, the meeting adjourned, and the crew was escorted to a designated area within the city. Here they would remain until the Council decided their next steps. The accommodations were unlike anything they had ever seen. Rooms constructed from what appeared to be living material. Walls that shifted and adapted to their needs. Furniture that molded itself to their bodies when they sat down. Despite the luxury, the crew found little comfort. They gathered in a communal space, discussing what had transpired and preparing for what lay ahead. "We did well," Daniel said, breaking the silence. "But I don't think they fully trust us yet." Ethan nodded, rubbing his temples. "Going to take time? Trust isn't something you earn overnight." Lucas leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "I think we proved we're willing to make sacrifices. That's got to count for something." Rachel sighed, running a hand through her hair. "It does, but we can't afford to slip up. Every move we make from here on out matters. If we want to stay in the Council, we'll need to show them we're serious." Meanwhile, back on Earth, the provisional membership announcement sparked mixed reactions. Some celebrated the news, seeing it as a monumental achievement for humanity. Others remained skeptical, questioning whether aligning with alien powers was truly in Earth's best interest. Sarah Bennett continued to lead protests, her speeches growing increasingly fiery. "They're selling us out," she shouted during a rally in London, her voice amplified by a megaphone. "Provisional membership means nothing if we lose control of our destiny. Why should we bow to alien overlords when we can forge our own path?" Her words resonated with many, fueling resistance movements across the globe. Protesters clashed with law enforcement, and rogue factions launched more unauthorized attacks on alien ships. Though most attempts failed, the incidents further strained relations between humanity and the Council. Amid the chaos, Alex Monroe tried to stay optimistic, followed the news closely, watching interviews with Rachel and the rest of the crew. Despite the criticism and unrest, he believed in his sister's ability to navigate the challenges ahead. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling of unease that lingered in the back of his mind. One evening, as he scrolled through social media, came across a post from a conspiracy theorist claiming the alien signal was a trap ploy to lure humanity into submission. The post was accompanied by grainy images of supposed alien weapons and cryptic messages warning of impending doom. Alex rolled his eyes, dismissing it as nonsense. But the seed of doubt had been planted. Back in the alien city, crew spent their days learning about the Council and its operations. They attended lectures on galactic politics, studied advanced technologies, and engaged in cultural exchanges with representatives from other species. Each interaction revealed new insights and new challenges. During one such exchange, Rachel found herself seated across from Ambassador Zanara of the Valith race. The shimmering alien regarded her with an unreadable expression, its glowing eyes fixed on hers. "You are brave," Zanara said finally, its voice melodic yet probing. "But bravery alone will not sustain you. What drives you human? What fuels your determination?" Rachel hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Hope," she replied after a moment. "Hope that we can build a better future for ourselves and for others. Hope that we're capable of change." Rachel nodded. Absorbing the alien's words, she knew Zanara was right. Hope alone wouldn't be enough to secure Earth's place in the galaxy. It would take hard work, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment. As the days turned into weeks, the crew grew more confident in their role as Earth's representatives. They faced challenges head-on, learning from their mistakes and adapting to the alien environment. Slowly but surely, they began to earn the respect of some council members, though others remained wary. Still, the road ahead was uncertain. Humanity's provisional membership was a fragile thing, easily revoked if they failed to meet expectations. The crew knew they couldn't afford complacency, not when so much was at stake. And somewhere in the shadows, unseen forces stirred. Not all council members welcomed Earth's inclusion, and whispers of dissent began to spread. For every step forward, there were those who... Document. Part 1. The night was calm, almost serene. Stars twinkled faintly in the sky above New York City, their light struggling to pierce through the haze of urban glow. Ethan Cole sat hunched over his desk at the Central Park Observatory, his eyes glued to the glowing screen of his computer. The room around him was dimly lit, save for the soft hum of monitors and the occasional beep from equipment scattered across the lab. It wasn't unusual for Ethan to lose track of time when he worked late, but tonight felt different. Something about the data on his screen kept pulling at his attention, refusing to let him look away. Ethan had always been fascinated by space. Ever since he was a child, staring up at the stars through a cheap telescope his parents bought him. He knew his life would revolve around unraveling the mysteries of the universe. Now, as an astronomer in his early 30s, he spent most of his days analyzing signals picked up by telescopes and satellites orbiting Earth. Most of what he found was noise-random bursts of energy or interference caused by human activity, but sometimes, just sometimes, there were anomalies worth investigating. Tonight, however, this wasn't just another anomaly. This was something extraordinary. It started as a faint pulse. It's barely noticeable amidst the static of deep space transmissions. At first, Ethan thought it might be a glitch in the system, so he ran diagnostics on the equipment to rule out any technical issues. The tests came back clean. He decided to dig deeper. He isolated the signal and began running algorithms to decode its structure. What he saw next made his heart race. The signal wasn't random, it was deliberate. Patterns emerged, repeating sequences of numbers that followed mathematical logic. Binary code. Whoever or whatever had sent this message wanted it to be understood. Ethan leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples as he tried to process what he was seeing. He had heard stories about alien contact before, of course. Movies, books, conspiracy theories, they all painted vivid pictures of humanity's first encounter with extraterrestrial life. But this was real. This wasn't fiction or speculation. This was evidence staring him right in the face. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for his phone. He needed to tell someone. Anyone. But who? Who could possibly believe? Him. He dialed Daniel Harper's number without thinking twice. Daniel was one of the few people Ethan trusted completely. They had met during graduate school, bonding over long nights spent debating the possibility of intelligent life beyond Earth. While Ethan preferred working alone, Daniel thrived in collaborative environments, often bringing fresh perspectives. Two problems that seemed unsolvable. If anyone could help make sense of this discovery, it was Daniel. Double quotes. "Hey, Ethan," Daniel answered groggily after several rings. "Do you have any idea what time it is?" "I think I found something," Ethan blurted out, ignoring the question. "Something big." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Daniel sighed. "Okay, give me 10 minutes to wake up, and then you can explain why you're calling me at..." He paused to check the clock. 2 in the morning. By the time Daniel arrived at the observatory, Ethan had already printed out pages of data and pinned them to a corkboard. Graphs, charts, and decoded sequences covered every inch of available space. Daniel took one look at the chaotic display and raised an eyebrow. "You weren't kidding when you said it was big." Ethan nodded eagerly. "Look at this." He pointed to a sequence of numbers arranged in rows. "These aren't random. They follow prime number patterns." Here he gestured toward another section of the board. "These are binary codes. I've translated some of them into basic symbols, geometry, equations, even coordinates." Daniel stepped closer, studying the information carefully. His initial skepticism slowly gave way to curiosity. Coordinates? You mean like directions? Exactly, Ethan replied. Whoever sent this wants us to go somewhere. Or maybe meet them. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of the discovery hung heavy in the air between them. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. We can't keep this to ourselves. It's not something like this. Ethan hesitated. He knew Daniel was right, but the thought of sharing this with the world terrified him. Governments, corporations, militaries, they'd all want a piece of it. Once word got out, there'd be no going back. Still, he couldn't deny the truth. This wasn't just his discovery anymore. It belonged to everyone. The next morning, news of the signal spread faster than either of them anticipated. Ethan and Daniel presented their findings to a small group of scientists and officials gathered at the observatory. The room buzzed with excitement and disbelief as they explained the significance of the transmission. Some attendees scribbled notes furiously while others whispered among themselves, speculating about the implications. But not everyone reacted positively. One man, a representative from a private defense contractor, stood up abruptly, his face flushed with anger. Telling me we've intercepted a message from aliens, and you didn't notify the proper authorities immediately? Do you have any idea how dangerous this could be? Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but Daniel beat him to it. Dangerous. Groundbreaking. We don't even know who or what sent this yet. All we know is that it's proof we're not alone in the universe. The argument escalated quickly, turning into a heated debate that spilled out into the hallway. Reporters caught wind of the commotion and descended on the observatory like vultures eager for a story. Within hours, headlines around the world screamed variations of the same theme. Alien signal detected. Is humanity ready for contact? Are we being watched? Public reaction was mixed. Step forward for humanity, while others panicked, fearing invasion or worse. Social media platforms flooded with conspiracy theories, memes, and doomsday predictions. Religious leaders weighed in, interpreting the event as either divine intervention or a harbinger of apocalypse. Politicians scrambled to address the situation, each trying to position themselves as the voice of reason in an increasingly chaotic world. Amid the frenzy, Ethan struggled to maintain focus. Every interview request, every email demanding answers, it all felt overwhelming. He hadn't signed up for this. None of them had. Yet here they were, thrust onto the global stage because of a single signal from the stars. One evening, as Ethan stared out the window of his apartment, he noticed something peculiar. The signal had stopped. For reasons unknown, the transmission had ceased entirely. Whether it was intentional or accidental remained unclear, but the sudden silence left an eerie void. Is this part of the plan? A test of some kind? Or had they simply moved on? Ethan didn't know. All he knew was that the galaxy had spoken, and now humanity had to decide how to respond. Document Part 2. Rachel Monroe sat at her desk in the United Nations headquarters, staring blankly at a stack of papers she hadn't touched in over an hour. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of fluorescent lights above her head, and the occasional rustle of leaves outside her window as the wind picked up. Normally, Rachel thrived in high-pressure situations. As a diplomat with years of experience navigating delicate peace talks and international crises, she had developed a reputation for staying calm under pressure. But this was unlike anything she had ever faced before. The discovery of the alien signal had turned the world upside down, and now it was her job to help guide humanity's response. She had been summoned to an emergency meeting with top government officials, scientists, and military leaders from around the globe. The purpose of the meeting was clear: decide whether Earth should attempt to communicate back or remain silent. It wasn't just about science anymore. It was about survival, diplomacy, and the future of humanity itself. And Rachel knew that whatever decision they made would have consequences far beyond what anyone could predict. As she gathered her notes and prepared to leave, her phone buzzed on the desk. It was a text message from her younger brother, Alex, who lived in Chicago. "Hey sis," it read. "Is it true? Are we really going to talk to aliens? This is insane." Rachel sighed and typed a quick reply. "It's complicated. I'll call you later." She wished she could explain everything to him, but even she didn't fully understand what was happening yet. All she knew was that the stakes were higher than ever. When Rachel arrived at the conference room, the atmosphere was tense. Dozens of people filled the space, their faces illuminated by the glow of laptops and tablets. Maps, charts, and decoded fragments of the alien signal covered the walls. At the center of the table stood Dr. Emily Carter, a renowned astrophysicist who had flown in from California to assist with the situation. Her voice carried authority as she addressed the group. "The signal is undeniably intelligent," Emily began, pointing to a series of equations displayed on a large screen. "These patterns are not random. They're structured, mathematical, and designed to convey meaning. Whoever sent this wants us to understand them." A man in a dark suit leaned forward, his expression skeptical. "But why?" he asked. "Why? Send a message now? Why target Earth specifically? What do they want from us?" Emily hesitated. "We don't know their intentions yet. That's why caution is critical. We need to analyze every detail before making any decisions." Rachel listened intently, scribbling notes in the margins of her notebook. While Emily's explanation made sense, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to consider. This wasn't just about decoding a message. It was about trust. Could humanity afford to take such a risk without knowing the full picture? And if they did respond, how would they ensure they weren't walking into a trap? Before she could voice her thoughts, another voice cut through the room. To General Marcus Hale, a stern-looking military officer with a reputation for being direct and often blunt. "Caution won't save us if they're hostile," he said, his tone sharp. "If these aliens are advanced enough to send a signal across light years, they're probably capable of attacking us too. We can't sit here debating while they plan their next move." Rachel frowned. She respected the general's perspective, but his approach worried her. Acting out of fear could escalate the situation unnecessarily. Diplomacy required patience and careful consideration, not knee-jerk reactions. Before she could respond, someone else spoke, up a young scientist named Priya Patel, whose soft-spoken demeanor belied her fierce intelligence. General Hale raises, "A valid point," Priya said cautiously. "But responding aggressively might provoke them. If we act defensively without understanding their motives, we risk turning curiosity into conflict. We should focus on gathering more information first." The room erupted into murmurs of agreement and disagreement, each side arguing passionately for their position. Rachel watched silently, observing the dynamics of the group. Some were driven by logic, others by emotion, and still others by fear. It reminded her of the countless negotiations she'd mediated in the past, where conflicting interests threatened to derail progress. This time, though, the stakes were infinitely higher. Finally, Rachel decided it was time to intervene. She stood up, smoothing her blazer as all eyes turned toward her. "Everyone has valid concerns," she began, her voice steady and measured. "But let's not forget the bigger picture. This isn't just about us, it's about humanity as a whole. Whatever we do, we need to act in a way that reflects our values. Cooperation, not confrontation. Curiosity, not hostility." Her words seemed to resonate with some members of the group, but others remained unconvinced. A woman seated near the front raised her hand tentatively. "Ms. Monroe," she said, "what if they're not interested in cooperation? What if they see us as inferior or worse, as a threat?" Rachel nodded, acknowledging the question. "That's a possibility we can't ignore. But rushing into decisions based on assumptions won't help us either. We need to gather more data, consult experts, and weigh all options carefully. Panicking will only make things worse." Despite her efforts to encourage thoughtful discussion, Rachel could feel the tension in the room mounting. Political pressures weighed heavily on everyone present. Nations wanted answers, and they wanted them fast. Some countries had already begun mobilizing resources, preparing for the worst-case scenario. Others pushed for immediate action, urging the UN to draft a formal response to the signal. The divide between cautious deliberation and impulsive reaction grew wider with each passing minute. After hours of debate, the meeting adjourned without reaching a consensus. As Rachel packed up her belongings, Emily approached her. You handled that well, the scientist said with a small smile. Not many people could keep their cool in a room like that. Rachel shrugged. I'm just doing my job. But honestly, I'm not sure anyone knows what the right answer is here. Every choice comes with risks. Emily nodded thoughtfully. True, still, your perspective matters. Remind people that this isn't just about politics or science, it's about humanity. Don't underestimate the power of that. Later. That evening, Rachel found herself unable to sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling as her mind raced with possibilities. What if the aliens were benevolent, offering knowledge and technology that could solve Earth's most pressing problems? Or what if they viewed humanity as nothing more than a primitive species, unworthy of their attention or worse, a competitor to be eliminated? Her thoughts drifted to Alex in his earlier text message. He had always looked up to her, trusting her judgment even when she doubted herself. How would she explain all of this to him? To anyone? The weight of responsibility pressed down on her chest, heavier than ever before. The next morning, Rachel received an email from Ethan Cole, the astronomer who had first detected the signal. Attached to the message was a detailed analysis of recent developments, including new insights into the transmission structure. One section caught her attention immediately, a set of coordinates embedded within the signal, according to Ethan. These coordinates pointed to a location near Proxima Centauri, the closest star system to Earth. Rachel stared at the numbers, her pulse quickening. Was this an invitation? A challenge? Or something else entirely? Whatever it was, it felt like a turning point. Humanity stood on the brink of a decision that would shape its destiny forever. And Rachel knew she had a role to play in guiding it, as she forwarded the email to key members of the UN team. Rachel couldn't help but wonder, were they ready for what came next? Document. Part 3. Daniel Harper sat in his small office at the Central Park Observatory, staring at the blinking cursor on his computer screen. The room was cluttered with papers, coffee cups, and half-finished equations scribbled on whiteboards. Outside, the city buzzed with the usual chaos of New York honking cars, distant sirens, and the occasional shout from street vendors, but Daniel barely noticed. His mind was elsewhere, lost in the endless stream of data pouring in from the alien signal. Ethan had asked him to take a closer look at the transmission while he dealt with the growing media storm. At first, Daniel wasn't sure what he could contribute that Ethan hadn't already uncovered. But as he dove deeper into the numbers and patterns, something caught his eye. Hidden within the layers of binary code were sequences that didn't quite fit with the rest. They weren't random noise. They were too precise for that. It took hours of analysis, but eventually, Daniel realized what he was looking at. Coordinates. He leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his messy brown hair. Coordinates. Why would an alien message include coordinates? Was it a meeting? Point? A warning? Or maybe even an invitation? Whatever it was, it felt important too important to ignore. He grabbed his phone and dialed Ethan's number, his fingers trembling slightly with excitement. Hey, Daniel, Ethan answered after. A few rings. What's up? I think I found something, Daniel said quickly, his voice tinged with urgency. There are coordinates embedded in the signal, near Proxima Centauri. There was a pause on the other end of the line, then Ethan spoke, his tone sharp with curiosity. Proxima Centauri. That's close, relatively speaking anyway. Exactly, Daniel replied. If this is some kind of rendezvous point, it's not far enough away to be impossible for us to reach. With our current technology at least? Ethan exhaled sharply. You're thinking about sending a ship, aren't you? Daniel hesitated. He hadn't thought that far ahead yet, but now that Ethan mentioned it, the idea seemed obvious. We have to consider it, he said finally. If we want answers, we can't just sit here waiting for them to come to us. This might be our chance to make contact to prove we're ready for whatever comes next. Ethan didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice carried a note of caution. It's risky, Daniel. We don't know who or what is waiting for us out there. What if they're not friendly? That's why we prepare, Daniel shot back. We gather the best scientists, engineers, and diplomats we can find. We approach this carefully, respectfully. "And if things go wrong, we have backup plans." The two men talked for nearly an hour, weighing the pros and cons of pursuing the coordinates. By the time they hung up, Daniel felt more determined than ever. He knew convincing others wouldn't be easy, especially given the divided opinions among world leaders, but he also knew that humanity couldn't afford to stay passive. If Earth wanted a seat at the galactic table, it would have to take bold steps. The following day, Daniel presented his findings to Rachel Monroe during a private meeting at the UN headquarters. Rachel listened intently as he explained the significance of the coordinates, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. "So you're saying these coordinates could lead us to the aliens?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with skepticism. "Possibly," Daniel admitted. "Or at least to wherever they want us to go. It's hard to say without more information. But if we don't act, we might miss our only chance to understand them and down ourselves better." Rachel nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on the map Daniel had brought with him. The location near Proxima Centauri was marked with a red dot, surrounded by swirling lines representing nearby star systems. It looked so simple on paper, yet the implications were staggering. "What do you propose we do?" she asked after a moment. "We build a ship," Daniel said without hesitation. "Spacecraft capable of reaching the coordinates and bringing back evidence, whether it's physical samples, recordings, or direct communication. And we send the best team possible: scientists, engineers, diplomats, and pilots." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "That's easier said than done. Building a spacecraft like that will cost billions, not to mention the political challenges of getting nations to cooperate. Plus, there's no guarantee we'll survive the trip." "I know it's ambitious," Daniel replied. "But isn't that better than doing nothing? If we wait too long, someone else might make the decision for us. Or worse, the aliens could lose patience and move on." Rachel sighed, rubbing her temples as she considered his words. She knew Daniel was right about one thing: inaction came with its own risks. Still, the logistics of such a mission were daunting. Who would fund it? Who would lead it? And how would they ensure the safety of everyone involved? Before she could respond, her assistant knocked on the door and entered, holding a folder. "Ms. Monroe," she said, "you need to see this." Rachel opened the folder and scanned its contents. Her eyes widened as she read the report inside. Apparently, several rogue military factions had begun secretly developing weapons capable of targeting extraterrestrial threats. One group, operating out of Eastern Europe, had even launched a missile test aimed at the alien fleet orbiting Earth. Thankfully, the missile had been deflected effortlessly by the aliens' advanced technology. But the incident had sent shockwaves through global leadership. "This complicates things," Rachel muttered, handing the folder to Daniel. "If rogue groups start attacking without authorization, it could escalate tensions faster than we can control them." Daniel skimmed the report, his jaw tightening. "This is exactly why we need to act now," he said firmly. "If we don't show the aliens that we're serious about cooperation, they might see us as a threat. And if they decide to retaliate..." He trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. Rachel understood perfectly. Humanity was walking a tightrope, balancing between fear and hope. One misstep could send everything crashing down. Over the next few days, Rachel worked tirelessly to rally support for Daniel's proposal. She held meetings with key figures in government, science, and industry, presenting the case for constructing a spacecraft and assembling a team to investigate the coordinates. Some were hesitant, citing financial concerns and potential dangers. Others were eager to proceed, seeing the mission as an opportunity to showcase humanity's ingenuity and resilience. One particularly heated discussion took place between Rachel and General Marcus Hale, the same military officer who had argued for preemptive action during the earlier meeting. Hal paced back and forth in Rachel's office, his boots clicking against the polished floor. "You're playing a dangerous game, Monroe," he growled. "Sending humans into deep space to meet unknown entities. That's suicide. We should fortify Earth, instead build defenses, prepare for war." "And what happens if your preparation provokes them?" Rachel countered, her voice calm but firm. "They've shown no signs of aggression so far. Attacking them outright would destroy any chance of peaceful relations." Rachel stood up, matching his intensity. Then let's prove them wrong. Let's show them we're not just ants, we're intelligent, capable beings, worthy of their attention. Isn't that better than hiding behind walls and weapons? For a moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Hale shook his head and stormed out of the room, muttering under his breath. Rachel sank back into her chair, exhausted but resolute. She knew she couldn't win over everyone, but every ally counted. By the end of the week, Rachel had managed to secure provisional approval for the mission. A coalition of nations agreed to pool resources and expertise to construct a state-of-the-art spacecraft called the Aurora Dawn. Scientists and engineers worked around the clock to design and build the vessel, incorporating cutting-edge technology donated by private companies and research institutions. Meanwhile, Rachel began selecting candidates for the crew, prioritizing individuals with diverse skills and backgrounds. Among those chosen was Captain Lucas Wright, a seasoned astronaut known for his calm demeanor and quick thinking under pressure. Also on the list were Ethan Cole and Daniel Harper, whose knowledge of the alien signal made them invaluable assets. Rounding out the team were specialists in biology, linguistics, engineering, and diplomacy united by a shared goal to represent Earth in its first encounter with extraterrestrial life. As preparations continued, public interest in the mission reached fever pitch. News outlets covered every detail from the design of the Aurora Dawn to profiles of the crew members. People around the world watched live broadcasts of the construction process, cheering on the brave souls who would soon venture into the unknown. Despite the excitement, however, doubts lingered. Protesters gathered outside government buildings, holding signs that read, "Don't trust aliens and protect Earth first." Conspiracy theorists claimed the entire mission was a hoax, designed to distract from Earth's problems. Even within the scientific community, debates raged about the ethics and feasibility of making contact. Through it all, Daniel remained focused. He spent long hours refining the ship's navigation systems, ensuring it could handle the journey to Proxima Centauri. Whenever doubt crept in, he reminded himself why he was doing this, not just for humanity's future, but for the chance to answer Q. Document. Part for the days leading up to the launch of the Aurora Dawn had been a whirlwind of activity. Engineers worked tirelessly to double-check every system. Astronauts rehearsed emergency protocols, and diplomats drafted messages of goodwill in case humanity's first contact turned out to be peaceful. The world watched with bated breath as news outlets covered every detail, from the ship's sleek design to the personal stories of its crew members. Despite the excitement, there was an undercurrent of tension, a shared understanding that this mission could change everything. When the Aurora Dawn finally left Earth's atmosphere, it carried not just a team of scientists and diplomats, but also the hopes and fears of billions. Captain Lucas Wright sat at the helm, his hands steady on the controls as he guided the ship through the void of space. Behind him, Ethan Cole and Daniel Harper monitored the navigation systems, ensuring they stayed on course for the coordinates near Proxima Centauri. The rest of the crew moved about the cabin, performing their assigned tasks with quiet determination. For the first few days, the journey felt almost routine. The ship's advanced technology made travel smoother than anyone had anticipated, and the crew settled into a rhythm of work and rest. But as they ventured further from Earth, the reality of their situation began to sink in. They were alone, surrounded by endless darkness, heading toward an unknown destination. Every beep of the ship's instruments and every flicker of light outside the windows reminded them of how far they were from home, and how little they truly understood about what awaited them. Then, on the 5th day of the mission, something changed. It started as a faint shimmer in the distance, barely noticeable against the backdrop of stars. At first, the crew assumed it was a trick of the light or a malfunction in the ship's sensors. But as they drew closer, the shimmer grew brighter, taking on a distinct shape. It was a fleet of ships, dozens of them, maybe more, hovering silently. In formation, their designs were unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Sleek and metallic, they seemed to pulse with an inner glow, shifting colors like liquid mercury under sunlight. "Is that them?" Daniel asked, his voice trembling slightly as he stared at the view screen. Ethan nodded slowly, his eyes wide with awe. "It has to be. Captain Wright activated the ship's communication system, broadcasting a pre-recorded message of peace in multiple languages. "This is the Aurora Dawn, representing the people of Earth," he said, his tone calm but firm. "We come in peace, seeking understanding and cooperation." There was no immediate response. For several tense minutes, the alien fleet remained motionless, their presence both mesmerizing and unnerving. Then, one of the ships detached from the group and moved toward the Aurora Dawn. Its movements were deliberate, almost graceful, as if it were sizing up the human vessel. Rachel Monroe, seated near the back of the cockpit, gripped the armrests of her chair tightly. She had spent years negotiating with world leaders, but nothing could have prepared her for this moment. This wasn't just another diplomatic meeting. This was history in the making. If things went wrong, there would be no second chances. Suddenly, a bright beam of light shot out from the approaching ship, enveloping the Aurora Dawn. Alarms blared throughout the cabin, and the crew scrambled to assess the situation. But instead of feeling attacked, they realized the light was harmless. It was a form of communication. A holographic image materialized in front of them, filling the entire cockpit with a towering figure. The being called itself Xenon 7. Though its appearance was difficult to describe, its form shifted constantly. Resembling a blend of organic and mechanical elements, it spoke in flawless English, its voice deep and resonant. "You have traveled far," Xenon 7 said, addressing the crew directly. "Your efforts are commendable." Rachel stepped forward, her heart pounding. "Thank you," she replied, choosing her words carefully. "We wish to learn from you and share our knowledge in return." Xenon 7 tilted its head, as if considering her statement. "Earth has potential," it said after a pause. "But joining the Galactic Council requires proof of worthiness. Cooperation, intelligence, and resilience will be tested. Fail, and your place among the stars will remain uncertain." The room fell silent as the crew processed the implications of Xenon 7's words. Humanity wasn't being welcomed with open arms. It was being evaluated. The stakes were higher than they had imagined. Before anyone could respond, Xenon 7 continued. "Know this. Alignment with the Council brings benefits but also responsibilities. Some races may view your inclusion as a threat. Others may see opportunity. Prepare yourselves accordingly." With that, the hologram vanished, and the alien fleet dispersed, leaving the Aurora Dawn floating alone once again. For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of what had just happened hung heavy in the air. "Well," Daniel said finally, breaking the silence that was tense. Lucas let out a slow breath, running a hand over his face. "I guess we know why we're here now, not just to meet them, but to prove ourselves." Rachel nodded, her expression thoughtful. "They're giving us a chance. That's all we can ask for." As the crew returned to their duties, the mood aboard the ship shifted. The initial excitement was tempered by a newfound sense of purpose. They weren't just explorers anymore. They were representatives of humanity, tasked with proving that Earth deserved a place among the stars. Over the next few days, the crew reviewed every piece of information they had gathered so far. Ethan and Daniel pored over recordings of the encounter with Xenon 7, analyzing its speech patterns and behavior for clues about the alien race's intentions. Meanwhile, Rachel worked with the linguists and cultural experts on board to craft potential responses, ensuring they conveyed respect and openness without appearing weak. Despite their preparations, uncertainty lingered. What exactly did the aliens mean by proof of worthiness? How would they test humanity, and what would happen if they failed? On the 8th day of the journey, the Aurora Dawn reached the coordinates provided in the original signal. What they found there took their breath away. Instead of a planet or star, they discovered a massive structure suspended in space. It resembled a glowing ring, hundreds of kilometers wide, spinning slowly in the void. Its surface shimmered with iridescent colors reflecting the light of nearby stars. As the ship approached, the crew noticed intricate patterns etched into the ring's surface symbols that seemed to shift and change depending on the angle of view. "That must be it," Ethan whispered, his voice filled with wonder. Gateway Xenon 7 mentioned. Captain Wright, guided the Aurora Dawn closer, careful not to trigger any defensive mechanisms. As they neared the ring, a wave of energy washed over the ship, causing the lights inside to flicker briefly. Then, without warning, the ring activated. A brilliant flash of light engulfed the vessel, and for a split second, the crew felt as though they were falling not physically, but mentally, as if their very consciousness was being pulled apart and reassembled. When the light faded, they found themselves in a completely different part of space. Stars stretched out before them in unfamiliar constellations, and in the distance loomed a sprawling city-like structure. Towering crystalline spires rose from floating platforms, connected by bridges of light. Ships of various shapes and sizes drifted lazily around the city, their occupants visible as shadowy figures moving within. This isn't possible, Daniel murmured, staring at the view in disbelief. It is now, Ethan replied, equally stunned. Rachel stepped forward, her gaze fixed on the alien metropolis. This is where we'll be tested, she said softly. Let's make sure we're ready. The Aurora Dawn approached the city. The crew braced themselves for whatever lay ahead. They had come this far, defying fear and doubt to reach this moment. It was time to show the galaxy what humanity was made of. Document. Part 5. The Aurora Dawn hovered at the edge of the alien city, its engines humming softly as the crew stared in awe at the sight before them. The crystalline towers glimmered like diamonds under the light of distant stars, their surfaces reflecting colors that seemed to shift and dance. Floating platforms stretched across the void, connected by bridges made of what appeared to be pure energy. Ships of all shapes and sizes drifted lazily around the structure, some sleek and metallic, others organic and fluid-like. It was a scene straight out of a dream, or perhaps a nightmare. Captain Lucas Wright gripped the controls tightly, his knuckles white as he guided the ship closer to the city. "Stay sharp," he said over his shoulder, addressing the crew. "We don't know what's waiting for us down there." Ethan Cole leaned forward in his seat, his eyes glued to the view screen. "This place? It's incredible," he murmured. "But also overwhelming. How do we even begin to navigate this?" Daniel Harper nodded in agreement, his fingers flying across a tablet as he tried to record every detail. "One step at a time," he replied. "Let's focus on finding a landing zone. If they wanted us here, they'll guide us somehow." As if on cue, a beam of light shot out from one of the larger towers, illuminating the Aurora Dawn. The ship shuddered slightly as the light enveloped it, but there was no sense of danger, only a strange warmth like sunlight on skin. Moments later, a holographic message appeared inside the cockpit, projected directly in front of the crew. "Welcome to the Council Nexus," a voice said, calm and melodic. "Please proceed to Docking Bay 7. Representatives will meet you upon arrival." Rachel Monroe stepped forward, her expression cautious but determined. "Docking Bay 7, she repeated aloud, turning to Lucas. "Take us there." Lucas nodded and adjusted the ship's trajectory, following the path illuminated by the beam of light. As they approached the designated area, the crew noticed several smaller ships breaking away from the city and heading toward them. Their designs varied wildly. One looked insectoid with spindly legs. Another resembled a living creature with pulsating veins, but all moved with precision and purpose. When the Aurora Dawn finally touched down in Docking Bay 7, the crew prepared to disembark. Each member donned a specially designed suit equipped with translation devices and environmental regulators, ensuring they could communicate and breathe safely, regardless of conditions outside. Rachel led the way, stepping onto the platform with steady confidence despite the knot of nerves twisting in her stomach. They were greeted by a group of aliens representing different species. Some were humanoid in appearance, while others defied description entirely. One had translucent skin through which glowing organs pulsed rhythmically. Another floated above the ground, its body composed of swirling gases. Despite their differences, they shared one common trait, an air of quiet authority that commanded respect. A tall figure with shimmering scales stepped forward, introducing itself as Ambassador Zenara of the Valeth race. Its voice resonated deeply, carrying an almost musical quality. "You have arrived," Zenara said, inclining its head slightly. "Your presence is noted. Follow us." The crew exchanged nervous glances, but followed without hesitation. They were led through a series of corridors lined with intricate carvings and glowing symbols. The walls seemed alive, shifting subtly as they passed. Ethan reached out instinctively to touch one, only to pull his hand back when the surface rippled like water. "This place feels alive," Daniel whispered, voicing what everyone else was thinking. "It probably is," Ethan replied quietly. "Or at least powered by something far beyond our understanding." Their journey ended in a vast chamber filled with representatives from dozens of alien races. Each species occupied its own section of the room, arranged in a circular pattern around a central platform. At the heart of the circle stood Xenon 7, its ever-changing form casting faint reflections on the polished floor. Xenara gestured for the humans to step onto the platform. Rachel took a deep breath and walked forward, flanked by Lucas, Ethan, and Daniel. She scanned the room, meeting the curious gazes of countless alien eyes, or whatever served as eyes for these beings. Some watched with open fascination, while others regarded the humans with thinly veiled disdain. Xenon 7 addressed the assembly, its voice echoing throughout the chamber. "Earth has come seeking admission to the Galactic Council. Before such a decision can be made, they must demonstrate their worthiness. Trials will commence immediately." The announcement sent a ripple of murmurs through the crowd. Rachel felt her pulse quicken but forced herself to remain composed. "We're ready," she said firmly, her voice carrying across the room. "Whatever challenges you present, we'll face them with courage and integrity." Her words earned a few nods of approval, though many remained skeptical. A representative from a bird-like species tilted its head, studying her intently. "Courage is admirable," it chirped in a high-pitched tone. "But intelligence and adaptability are equally important. Let us see how you fare." With that, the first trial began. The crew was escorted to a separate chamber where they found themselves standing before a massive wall covered in glowing symbols. The task was simple. Solve the puzzle encoded within the patterns to unlock the door leading to the next stage. For Ethan and Daniel, this was familiar territory. They had spent years deciphering complex codes and equations. But the pressure of performing under the watchful eyes of alien observers added a new layer of difficulty. "We need to work quickly," Ethan said, pointing to a sequence of numbers embedded in the design. "These look like prime factors. If we isolate them, we might find a key," Daniel nodded, pulling out his tablet. "I'll start mapping the connections. You handle the calculations." As they worked together, the rest of the crew kept watch, ensuring no one interfered or sabotaged their efforts. Time seemed to stretch endlessly, each second heavier than the last. Finally, after what felt like hours, Ethan let out a triumphant cry. "Got it." The symbols shifted, rearranging themselves into a coherent pattern. With a soft hum, the door slid open, revealing the next challenge. The second trial tested their ability to navigate a labyrinth, filled with illusions designed to exploit their deepest fears. Rachel found herself walking alone through twisting corridors, her surroundings changing with every step. Shadows flickered at the edges of her vision, and voices whispered in her ears, some familiar, others distorted and menacing. "You'll fail," one voice hissed. "Everyone is counting on you, and you'll let them down." Rachel clenched her fists, focusing on her breathing. "This isn't real," she muttered. "It's just a test." She pressed onward, refusing to give in to the fear gnawing at her mind. Eventually, the illusions faded, and she emerged into a brightly lit chamber where the rest of the crew waited. They looked shaken but intact, having faced similar trials individually. "Well done," Xenon 7 said, appearing once again. "But remember, resilience is only part of the equation. Cooperation is key." Back on Earth, news of the ongoing trials spread rapidly. Social media buzzed with speculation and protests erupted in major cities. Some people demanded immediate withdrawal from the mission, claiming humanity wasn't ready for such responsibility. Others argued that backing out now would be a sign of weakness, potentially jeopardizing Earth's future. Among the loudest voices of dissent was Sarah Bennett, a fiery environmental activist who had gained widespread attention for her anti-council stance. Standing atop a makeshift stage in Times Square, She addressed a growing crowd of supporters. "We don't need their approval," she shouted, her voice amplified by a megaphone. "Why should we bow to alien overlords when we can't even take care of our own planet? This mission is reckless, dangerous, and unnecessary." Her words struck a chord with many, fueling resistance movements across the globe. Rogue military factions seized the opportunity to act, launching unauthorized attacks on alien ships orbiting Earth, though most attempts failed. Miserably deflected effortlessly by superior technology, the incidents further strained relations between humanity and the Council. Despite the chaos unfolding back home, the crew aboard the Aurora Dawn remained focused. They knew failure wasn't an option not just for themselves, but for the billions counting on them to succeed. As they prepared for the final trial, Rachel gathered the team in a private chamber to discuss strategy. "We've made it this far," she said, her voice steady. "Now comes the hardest part. Whatever happens next, we stick together, no matter what." The others nodded, their expressions grim but resolute. They had faced impossible odds before, and they were ready to do it again. Little did they know, the final trial would push them to their limits and reveal secrets that could change everything. Document Part 6. The final trial awaited the crew of the Aurora Dawn. In a chamber unlike any they had seen before, the walls shimmered with an iridescent glow, and the air carried a faint hum as if the room itself was alive. At the center stood a pedestal, its surface etched with intricate patterns that pulsed softly, casting shifting shadows across the floor. Surrounding the pedestal were holographic projection scenes of Earth's history, moments both triumphant and tragic. Wars, discoveries, acts of kindness, and environmental destruction played out in vivid detail. Forcing the crew to confront humanity's past, Xenon 7 materialized beside the pedestal, its form flickering like a mirage. "This is your final test," it announced, its voice echoing through the chamber. "You must demonstrate not only intelligence and resilience, but also morality. Choose wisely, for your decision will determine Earth's fate." Rachel stepped forward, her heart pounding. She glanced at the others, silently asking for their support. "What do we need to do?" she asked, her tone steady, despite the knot of anxiety tightening in her chest. Xenon-7 gestured toward the pedestal. "Each of you will face a scenario, a choice between two paths. One leads to survival, the other to sacrifice. Your decisions will reveal whether humanity is ready to join the Galactic Council." Before anyone could respond, the room shifted. The crew found themselves separated, each standing alone in a different version of Earth's future. For Rachel, the scene unfolded. In a bustling city square, the sun shone brightly overhead and people moved about their lives as if everything was normal. But something felt off. The air smelled stale, and the sky, though blue, lacked depth, as if painted onto a canvas. A child ran up to her, tugging on her sleeve. "Are you here to help us?" the boy asked, his wide eyes filled with hope. Before Rachel could answer, a loud siren blared, drowning out all other sounds. The ground trembled, and a massive crack split the pavement, revealing a chasm below. From the depths emerged a swarm of machines, twisted, jagged constructs that moved with unnatural speed. Panic erupted as people scattered, screaming and fleeing for their lives. A voice echoed in Rachel's mind, calm but urgent. "Choose," it said. "Save yourself and leave these people to their fate, or stay and fight, knowing you may perish." Rachel froze, her thoughts racing. If she saved herself, she might live to see another day, but at what cost? Leaving these people behind would mean abandoning them to chaos and destruction. Yet staying meant risking everything, including her chance to secure Earth's place among the stars. Her instincts screamed at her to act. She grabbed a nearby metal pole, using it to fend off the nearest machine. Sparks flew as the pole clashed. Against the creature's jagged limbs, other survivors joined her, forming a makeshift defense line. Together, they fought back, driving the machines into retreat. As the threat subsided, the scene dissolved, leaving Rachel breathless and shaken. Meanwhile, Ethan faced a different scenario. He stood in a desolate wasteland, the ground cracked and barren, the sky a sickly shade of orange. In the distance, he saw a group of scientists huddled around a makeshift lab, their faces gaunt and weary. They were working tirelessly to reverse engineer alien technology, hoping to find a solution to Earth's declining resources. One of the scientists approached Ethan, holding out a device. "We've done it," the man said, his voice trembling with exhaustion. "This can restore the planet, but it requires a power source we don't have. You must decide. Use the last remaining energy reserves to save Earth, or preserve them for future generations, even if it means delaying recovery." Ethan hesitated, weighing the options. Saving Earth now would bring immediate relief, but at the risk of leaving future generations without the means to rebuild. Preserving the reserves offered long-term stability, but condemned the present population to continued suffering. He closed his eyes, thinking of all the nights he'd spent staring at the stars, dreaming of a better world. Slowly, he made his choice. "Preserve the reserves," he said firmly. "We owe it to those who come after us." The scientist nodded solemnly, and the scene faded. Leaving Ethan with a sense of quiet resolve, Daniel's trial took him to a lush forest, vibrant with life. Birds chirped in the trees, and sunlight filtered through the canopy, creating dappled patterns on the forest floor. It was peaceful, too peaceful. As he walked deeper into the woods, he noticed strange markings carved into the trees, symbols similar to those on the alien gateway near Proxima Centauri. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, an alien with translucent skin and glowing veins. It spoke in a language Daniel didn't understand, but its meaning was clear. Share knowledge or keep it hidden. Daniel's mind raced. Sharing knowledge could lead to breakthroughs, fostering cooperation between species. But it also carried risks. What if the information fell into the wrong hands? What if it was used for harm instead of good? "I'll share it," Daniel said finally, his voice firm. "Knowledge is meant to be shared, not hoarded." The alien inclined its head, and the forest dissolved, leaving Daniel standing once again in the shimmering chamber. Captain Lucas Wright faced the most personal trial of all. He found himself aboard a damaged spacecraft, drifting aimlessly. In deep space, his crew lay unconscious, their life support systems failing. A voice echoed in his mind, offering a choice: save his crew by diverting power from the engines, ensuring their survival, but stranding them indefinitely, or prioritize escape, sacrificing his team for the slim chance of reaching help. Lucas clenched his fists, his jaw tight with determination. He had always believed in putting others first, no matter the cost. Without hesitation, he rerouted power to the life support systems, stabilizing his crew's condition. The ship's engines sputtered and died, but the crew remained alive. As the simulation ended, Lucas returned to the chamber, his expression grim but resolute. He had made his choice, and he stood by it. When the trials concluded, the crew reunited in the central chamber, their faces etched with exhaustion and determination. Xenon 7 observed them silently, its form shifting and shimmering like liquid light. Finally it spoke. "You have faced difficult choices," it said, its voice resonating deeply. "Some of you chose sacrifice over self-preservation. Others prioritize long-term benefits over immediate gains. Your actions reflect both strength and vulnerability." Rachel stepped forward, her voice steady, despite the weight of uncertainty. Pressing down on her, "Did we pass?" she asked, her gaze locked on Xenon-7. The alien paused as if considering its response. "Your performance has been noted," it said finally. "But the decision rests not solely with me. The Council will deliberate further." With that, Xenon-7 vanished, leaving the crew in silence. They exchanged glances, unsure whether to feel relieved or anxious. Had they done enough, or had their efforts fallen short? Back on Earth, tensions continued to escalate. Sarah Bennett's protests gained momentum, drawing larger crowds and more vocal supporters. Her speeches grew increasingly fiery, accusing the UN and the Aurora Dawn crew of abandoning humanity's values in pursuit of alien approval. "They're gambling with our future," she shouted during a rally in Washington, D.C. While They play diplomat in space. We suffer here on Earth. Is this what we want? To trade our independence for scraps from the galactic table? Her words struck a chord with many, fueling widespread unrest. Protesters clashed with law enforcement, and rogue factions launched more unauthorized attacks on alien ships. Though most attempts failed, one strike managed to damage a smaller vessel, causing minor casualties among its crew. The incident sent shockwaves through the galaxy, prompting harsh criticism from several council members. Amid the chaos, Rachel's brother Alex reached out to her via a secure communication channel. "Hey sis," he said, his voice strained. "I know you're busy, but I just wanted to check in. Things are getting crazy here. People are scared." Rachel sighed, rubbing her temples. "I know, Alex. Believe me, I know. But we're doing everything we can to make things right." Alex hesitated, then added, "Just be careful, okay? Whatever happens out there, don't forget why you started this. For all of us." Rachel nodded, though he couldn't see her. "I won't," she promised. "Take care of yourself, Alex, and try to stay safe." As the call ended, Rachel felt a renewed sense of purpose. No matter what the council decided, she knew they had given their best effort. Humanity's flaws were undeniable, but so was its potential. All they could do now was wait and hope their actions had spoken louder than their fears.